The burgundy wine dripped slowly down Marcus Thompson's pristine white shirt, each drop a testament to the shocking act that had just silenced the entire first-class cabin of Flight 447 from New York to London. The vintage Bordeaux, ironically, from his own vineyard, stained not just his clothes, but the very fabric of what should have been a routine business flight. Marcus, a 42-year-old CEO of Thompson Technologies, a multi-billion-dollar sustainable energy company, sat frozen for exactly 3 seconds, not from shock, but from the practiced restraint of a black man who had navigated corporate America for 2 decades. He'd faced discrimination in boardrooms, at country clubs, and in 5-star hotels. But never had someone been so brazenly violent. Maybe that will teach you to stay where you belong. Flight attendant Patricia Hartwell hissed, her voice low but venomous, her perfectly manicured hand still gripping the now empty wineglass. Her blue eyes blazed with a hatred that seemed almost theatrical in its intensity. The cabin fell into a vacuum of disbelief. 23 passengers sat witness to what had just transpired, their expressions ranging from horror to confusion. The gentle hum of the aircraft's engines seemed deafening in the silence that followed. Marcus slowly removed his Hermes pocket square and dabbed at his shirt, his movements deliberate and calm. His brown eyes, usually warm and engaging, had turned cold as steel. "Ma'am," he said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had addressed the United Nations just a week prior. "I believe you've just made a very costly mistake." Minutes earlier, Marcus had simply asked for a glass of water. He'd been reviewing the final contracts for a revolutionary solar panel installation project in sub-Saharan Africa, a project that would bring electricity to over 3 million people living without power. The irony wasn't lost on him that he was about to illuminate entire communities while sitting in the darkness of prejudice. At 35,000 feet, Patricia Hartwell had walked past him 4 times without acknowledging his raised hand. Each time, she'd stopped to lavishly attend to the white passengers around him. She'd refreshed Mr. Williamson's champagne twice, adjusted Mrs. Crawford's pillow, and engaged in a 5-minute conversation about vacation homes with a couple in 2A and 2B. "Excuse me," Marcus had finally said, his tone professional but firm. "I've been trying to get your attention. Could I please have some water?" Patricia had turned slowly, her eyes scanning him from his Tom Ford suit to his Rolex Submariner, her lip curling slightly. "Economy passengers aren't supposed to be up here. How did you even get past security?" "I'm in seat 1A, Marcus replied, holding up his first-class boarding pass. "I've been sitting here since boarding." "That's impossible," Patricia snapped, snatching the boarding pass from his hand. She studied it with theatrical skepticism, turning it over as if searching for evidence of forgery. "This must be some kind of mistake. People like you don't. People like me," Marcus interrupted, his voice steady but his jaw tightening. "Would you care to elaborate on what you mean by that?" The tension in the cabin had become palpable. Several passengers had lowered their newspapers and removed their headphones. Sensing the confrontation brewing, Patricia's face flushed red. "I mean people who clearly don't belong in first class. This ticket was probably stolen, or what?" Marcus challenged. "Or a successful black man couldn't possibly afford to sit here. Is that what you're implying?" That's when Patricia had grabbed the glass of wine from her service cart. Without warning, without any physical provocation, she'd thrown its contents directly onto Marcus's chest, the red wine spreading across his white shirt like a wound. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" The voice boomed from seat 3C. Captain Sarah Mitchell, off-duty but in full uniform, traveling as a passenger to London for an aviation conference, shot up from her seat. Her 20 years of military service before joining commercial aviation had given her a command presence that filled the cabin. "Captain Mitchell," Patricia stammered, the wineglass slipping from her suddenly trembling hand, shattering on the cabin floor. "This man was being aggressive, and I've been watching this entire interaction." Captain Mitchell interrupted, her voice cutting through Patricia's excuses like a blade. "This gentleman has been nothing but polite while you've subjected him to discriminatory treatment that violates every regulation in our industry." She pulled out her phone and began recording. "For the record, this is Captain Sarah Mitchell, employee ID 447,829, documenting a civil rights violation and assault on Flight 447. She turned the camera to Patricia. "State your name and employee ID." Patricia's face had gone from red to ghostly white. "You can't. This isn't. I don't have to." "Actually, you do," another voice chimed in. A young woman in seat to C held up her phone. "I've been live streaming this to my 2.3 million followers since you first ignored this gentleman." The video, already has 100,000 views, and climbing. Marcus recognized her as Jasmine Chen, the social justice influencer whose viral videos had taken down corrupt politicians and exposed corporate wrongdoing. The universe, it seemed, had placed the perfect witnesses in the perfect seats. More phones appeared. The entire first-class cabin had become a forest of recording devices, each passenger documenting what would soon become the most viral airline incident of the year. Captain Mitchell was already on her satellite phone with the cockpit. "Captain Roberts, this is Mitchell in first class. We have a situation that requires immediate intervention. Yes, a flight attendant has assaulted a passenger. Racially motivated. Multiple witnesses and video evidence. I recommend we ground immediately." The plane's intercom crackled to life. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Due to a serious security incident, we will be making an emergency landing at Boston Logan International Airport. Please remain in your seats with your seatbelts fastened." Patricia's legs gave out, and she collapsed into an empty seat. The magnitude of what she'd done was finally crashing down on her. "Please," she whispered to Marcus, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean no. I have 3 kids. Kide can't lose this job." Marcus stood slowly, wine still dripping from his shirt. "You didn't mean what? To pour wine on me? Or to treat me like I was less than human because of the color of my skin?" His voice was calm, but everyone could hear the years of accumulated frustration beneath it. "How many other black passengers have you treated this way? How many people have sat silently through your discrimination because they didn't want to make a scene?" "This is my first time," Patricia began. "Liar." The word came from an unexpected source. George Williamson, the elderly white gentleman from 1B, stood up shakily, leaning on his cane. "I fly this route monthly for medical treatment in London. I've watched you do this before. Last month, you made a young black doctor move from first class to economy, claiming there was a booking error. 2 months ago, you refused to serve a black family, saying the first-class menu wasn't appropriate for children, even though you'd served the white family with kids the row behind them." Murmurs rippled through the cabin. More passengers began sharing their observations. "I saw her last year," added Mrs. Crawford. "She told a black businessman that first class was full, and made him sit in economy, even though there were 3 empty seats up here." The descent into Boston was the longest 23 minutes of Patricia Hartwell's life. The cabin remained silent, except for the sound of phones clicking, screenshots being saved, videos being uploaded, tweets being composed. Flight 447 racism was already trending worldwide. But Marcus had declined Captain Mitchell's offer to move to another seat. "No," he'd said firmly. "I'm going to sit right here, in the seat I paid for, wearing this wine-stained shirt as evidence of what happened." As the plane touched down, Marcus could see the flashing lights through the window. 3 police cars, 2 TSA vehicles, and surprisingly, 4 news vans were already waiting on the tarmac. Jasmine Chen's livestream had done its work. The seatbelt sign had barely been turned off when federal agents boarded the plane. The lead agent, a tall black woman with an FBI badge, walked directly to Marcus. "Mr. Thompson, I'm Special Agent Diana Foster. We've been monitoring the situation. Are you injured?" "No, ma'am, just humiliated and wine-soaked," Marcus replied. Agent Foster turned to Patricia. "Patricia Hartwell, you're under arrest for assault and violation of federal civil rights laws. You have the right to remain silent." As Patricia was led away in handcuffs, she passed by Marcus one final time. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Marcus looked at her directly. "Your apology would mean something if it had come before you were caught, before there were consequences. Now it's just regret for your situation, not remorse for your actions." The remaining passengers were transferred to another aircraft, but not before each had given statements to the authorities. The airline's CEO, Richard Brennan, personally boarded the plane to apologize to Marcus. "Mr. Thompson, I am mortified and deeply sorry for what you've experienced. This is not who we are as an airline." "With all due respect, Mr. Brennan," Marcus replied, "this is exactly who you are." This flight attendant felt comfortable enough to assault a passenger based on race. That doesn't happen in isolation. It happens when there's a culture that allows it to flourish. Brennan's face reddened. "I assure you, we have strict anti-discrimination policies." 3 hours later, in the airline's executive lounge, Marcus held an impromptu press conference. Still wearing his wine-stained shirt, now a powerful symbol, he stood before dozens of cameras and reporters. "Today's incident isn't just about one racist flight attendant," he began. It's about systemic discrimination that black travelers face every day. We're subjected to additional scrutiny at security, questioned about our right to be in premium cabins, and treated as potential threats rather than paying customers. He pulled out his phone and showed a photo. This is my daughter, Zoe. She's 16, brilliant, and dreams of being a pilot. Last month, she was told by a different airline staff that people like her should consider more realistic career goals. She came home in tears, questioning whether her dreams were too big for her skin color. The room was silent, the weight of his words settling over everyone present. But here's what Patricia Hartwell and others like her don't understand. Marcus continued, his voice growing stronger. Every act of discrimination, every moment of prejudice, only strengthens our resolve. My company, Thompson Technologies, was about to sign a $50 million annual contract with this airline for corporate travel. That contract is now cancelled. Furthermore, I'm establishing the Sky Equality Initiative, a $10 million fund to support diversity in aviation and to provide legal assistance to victims of air travel discrimination. Within hours, Marcus's story had gone beyond viral. It had become a movement. #Justice for Marcus and #Sky Equality were trending globally. Major corporations began announcing they were reviewing their contracts with the airline. 3 prominent Fortune 500 CEOs publicly stated they would not fly with the airline until systematic changes were implemented. But perhaps the most powerful response came from unexpected places. The Flight Attendants Union issued a statement condemning Patricia's actions and calling for better diversity training. Pilots associations worldwide expressed solidarity with Marcus. Even competing airlines released statements affirming their commitment to equality. Jasmine Chun's video had been viewed 50 million times in just 6 hours. She had posted it with a simple caption. This is what black excellence faces every single day. A CEO, a philanthropist, a father, reduced to his skin color by someone who was supposed to serve him. When will enough be enough? The answer came from Captain Sarah Mitchell, who had started a petition calling for federal legislation requiring enhanced civil rights training for all airline personnel. Within 24 hours, it had 3 million signatures. 1 week later, the investigations revealed damaging information. Patricia Hartwell had 17 previous complaints filed against her over 5 years, all from passengers of color. Each complaint had been dismissed with variations of misunderstanding or customer confusion. The pattern was clear and damning. The airline's internal emails, subpoenaed during the investigation, showed that management had been aware of Patricia's behavior but had chosen to simply rotate her routes, rather than address the issue. One email from a middle manager stated, Patricia is problematic with certain passengers, but she's senior staff, just keep her on the European routes where there are fewer complaints. The revelation sparked nationwide protests at the airline's headquarters. Marcus didn't participate in the protests, but he did something more powerful. He met with other black executives and travelers who had experienced similar discrimination. Together, they formed the Alliance for Air Travel Equality, representing over $2 billion in annual corporate travel spending. Their demand was simple, but revolutionary. Any airline wanting their business had to submit to quarterly civil rights audits, maintain a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination, and ensure diverse representation in leadership positions. 6 months later, Patricia Hartwell stood trial. The courtroom was packed, with overflow crowds watching on screens in adjacent rooms. Marcus testified with the same dignity he'd maintained throughout the ordeal. I've been called many things in my life, he told the jury. But that day, I wasn't called anything. I was treated as nothing, as invisible, as unworthy of basic human dignity. The wine she poured on me was just the physical manifestation of the contempt she'd been pouring on black passengers for years. Patricia's defense attorney tried to argue that she'd been having a bad day, that she was stressed, that it was an isolated incident. But the parade of witnesses, other passengers who had experienced or witnessed her discrimination, painted a different picture. George Williamson, the elderly passenger from 1B, gave particularly powerful testimony. I'm 78 years old, white, and from Mississippi. I grew up during segregation, and I've spent my adult life trying to atone for my silence during those shameful years. When I saw what Patricia did to Mr. Thompson, I saw the same hatred I witnessed in my youth. I couldn't stay silent again. The jury deliberated for just 2 hours. Guilty on all charges: assault, violation of civil rights, and creating a hostile environment based on race. Patricia was sentenced to 18 months in federal prison and ordered to pay $500,000 in damages. This story, while fictional, reflects the very real experiences of countless black travelers who face discrimination in the air and on the ground. If Marcus's story moved you, if you believe in justice and equality, then you're part of the solution. Like this story, if you stand against discrimination, comment with your own experiences or thoughts on how we can create a more equitable world. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful narratives that challenge us to be better, do better, and stand up for what's right. Remember, change doesn't happen at 35,000 feet. It happens when we all commit to treating each other with dignity and respect, regardless of the color of our skin. The next time you witness discrimination, be the Captain Mitchell, be the George Williamson, be the person who stands up and says, "This is wrong." Because in the end, we're all on this flight together, and we all deserve to travel with dignity. #Stand against racism. #Equality in the skies. #Justice for all.